The slap cracked across Emma's face like a gunshot, splitting her lip open in one vicious motion. Blood trickled down her chin as Donovan Thatcher's hand hung in the air, his face twisted in drunken satisfaction. The entire bar fell silent. He leaned in close, his breath reeking of whiskey and arrogance, and whispered loud enough for his ranger buddies to hear, "What's wrong, sweetheart? Cat got your tongue." His friends erupted in laughter, their voices bouncing off the sticky floor and wood-paneled walls. Emma didn't move, didn't blink. She just stared at him with those calm, unreadable eyes, blood pooling at the corner of her mouth. Donovan had no idea he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. This story is going to take you on a wild ride, and I want you here for every second of it. Also drop a comment below telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get back to it. Emma Consinkate didn't look like much sitting in that corner booth. She was small, maybe 5'4" on a good day, with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a worn college hoodie that swallowed her frame. Her hands were wrapped around a glass of water, not alcohol, and she kept her head down like she was trying to disappear into the cracked leather seat. To anyone watching, she looked like a kid who wandered into the wrong bar. Maybe a student from the community college down the road who needed a quiet place to think. Harmless, vulnerable, easy prey. That's exactly what Donovan Thatcher thought when he spotted her from across the room. "Look at that," Donovan said to his buddies, jerking his chin toward Emma's booth. He was loud, too loud, the kind of loud that came from too many drinks and too much ego. "Little girl all alone. What do you think she's doing in a place like this?" His friends, 3 other Rangers from the 75th Regiment, laughed on cue. They were all cut from the same cloth, big, muscular, with high and tight haircuts, and the kind of swagger that came from knowing they were trained killers. They'd been at the bar for hours celebrating some training exercise they'd aced, and the alcohol had turned their confidence into something uglier. "Maybe she's lost," one of them said, a guy named Martinez with a thick neck and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Or maybe she's looking for a real man," another one added. His name was Keller, and he had a scar running down his left cheek that he liked to show off. Donovan stood up, swaying slightly, and started walking toward Emma's booth. His boots thudded against the floor with each step, and the sound seemed to echo through the quiet bar. The bartender, an older guy with gray hair and tired eyes, glanced up but didn't say anything. He'd seen this kind of thing before. Military guys getting rowdy looking for trouble. It usually ended with someone getting kicked out or worse. Emma saw Donovan coming. Of course she did. She'd clocked him the moment he and his friends walked into the bar 2 hours ago. She'd recognized the walk, the posture, the way they carried themselves. Military, probably Army based on their builds and the patches she could make out on their jackets when they threw them over their chairs. Rangers, if she had to guess. Good soldiers, well-trained but young. Cocky, the kind who thought their training made them invincible. She'd dealt with their type before. Donovan reached her booth and stood there for a moment, looking down at her with a grin that made her stomach turn. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You look a little lonely over here. Mind if I keep you company?" Emma didn't look up. She kept her eyes on her glass, her fingers tracing the condensation on the outside. "I'm good, thanks," she said quietly. Donovan's grin faltered for just a second before it came back meaner this time. "Oh, come on, don't be like that. I'm just trying to be friendly." "I said I'm good." His jaw tightened. Behind him, his friends were watching, waiting to see what he'd do. Donovan felt the pressure of their eyes on his back, felt the need to prove himself, to show them he could handle a girl who didn't know her place. "You know what your problem is," he said, his voice getting louder. "You don't know how to talk to people. Someone should teach you some manners." Emma finally looked up at him. Her eyes were dark, almost black in the dim light of the bar, and there was something in them that made Donovan pause. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anger. It was something else, something he couldn't quite name. "Walk away," she said. Donovan laughed, but it sounded forced. "Or what? You gonna cry, gonna call your daddy?" Emma's hand tightened around her glass, but she didn't say anything. That's when Donovan made his first mistake. He reached out and knocked the glass out of her hand. It hit the table with a dull thud, water spilling everywhere, soaking into the napkins and dripping onto the seat. "Oops," he said, his grin widening. "Looks like you made a mess. Maybe you should clean that up." Emma stood up slowly. She was shorter than him by almost a foot, and when she stood, Donovan had to look down at her. It made him feel powerful and in control. "Sit down, sweetheart," he said, putting his hand on her shoulder and pushing her back toward the booth. That's when Emma's hand shot up and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was firm, not tight, but enough to make him pause. "Take your hand off me," she said. Donovan's face flushed red. He could hear his friends laughing behind him, could feel the weight of their judgment. He couldn't back down now, not in front of them. Or what? He said, leaning in close. What are you going to do about it, little girl? Emma's eyes didn't waver. You don't want to find out. Donovan's anger flared. Who did this girl think she was? He was a staff sergeant in the 75th Ranger Regiment. He'd done 3 tours overseas, had more combat experience than most people would see in a lifetime. And this little college girl thought she could threaten him. He pulled his hand back and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the bar like a thunderclap. Emma's head snapped to the side, and when she turned back, there was blood on her lip. It dripped down her chin, bright red against her pale skin. The bar went silent. Even Donovan's friends stopped laughing. Emma touched her lip with her finger, then looked at the blood. I know. She didn't seem surprised. Didn't seem scared. She just looked at Donovan with those same calm, unreadable eyes. Okay, she said quietly. Donovan felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed it away. He'd committed now. There was no going back. What's the matter? He said, his voice shaking slightly. You gonna hit me back? Come on, show me what you got. Emma didn't move. She just stood there, blood dripping from her chin, staring at him. Behind Donovan, Martinez stood up. Yo, Don, maybe we should... Shut up, Donovan snapped. He turned back to Emma. You think you're tough. You think because you don't cry that makes you strong. Emma's hand moved to her pocket, and for a second, Donovan thought she was going for a weapon. But instead, she pulled out a small metal coin and set it on the table between them. It was gold and heavy looking, with an engraving on one side that Donovan couldn't quite make out in the dim light. You know what this is? Emma asked. Donovan squinted at it. Some kind of poker chip. Emma almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's a challenge coin. My father gave it to me before he died. He was a Navy SEAL, served in Desert Storm. Got this coin after his team completed a mission that's still classified. Donovan felt something twist in his gut, but he forced himself to laugh. So what, your daddy was a SEAL that's supposed to scare me? Emma picked up the coin and held it between her fingers, turning it over slowly. No, it's supposed to remind me who I am, and right now it's reminding me that I need to give you a chance to walk away. Donovan's face twisted in anger. I'm not going anywhere. You need to learn some respect. He reached across the table and grabbed her wrist, squeezing hard enough to bruise. Emma looked down at his hand, then back up at him. You have 3 seconds to let go. Donovan squeezed harder. Or what? 3. His friends were standing now, sensing that things were about to go bad. 2. The bartender reached for the phone under the counter. Emma didn't get to 1. At 2, her free hand moved faster than Donovan could track. She grabbed his thumb and bent it back at an angle that made something inside his hand pop. Pain exploded through his wrist, and before he could react, Emma twisted his arm into a figure 4 lock that sent him crashing to his knees. What the... Martinez started forward, but Emma's eyes snapped to him, and something in that look made him freeze. Donovan tried to pull free, but Emma's grip was iron. She wasn't squeezing hard, wasn't using excessive force, but the angle of the lock made any movement impossible without breaking something. Let me go, Donovan gasped, his voice high and tight with pain. Emma leaned down, her voice soft enough that only he could hear. You hit me, in front of all these people, in front of your friends. You made a choice. Now I'm making mine. She twisted slightly, and Donovan heard 2 distinct pops as his index and middle fingers dislocated. He screamed a sound that cut through the bar like a siren. Emma released him and stepped back. Donovan collapsed to the floor, cradling his hand against his chest, his face white with shock and pain. His friends rushed forward, but Emma was already moving. Keller threw a punch, a wild right hook that had all his weight behind it. Emma saw it coming from a mile away. She could have dodged it, could have blocked it, but instead she let it connect with her cheek. The impact snapped her head to the side and she tasted blood again. But it gave her exactly what she needed. Keller's momentum carried him forward, and Emma used it against him. She grabbed his arm, mid-swing, stepped inside his guard, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. The air rushed out of Keller's lungs in a whoosh, and he doubled over, gasping. Martinez came next, trying to tackle her from the side. Emma pivoted, using his own weight to throw him off balance, and then swept his legs out from under him. He hit the floor hard, his head bouncing off the wood with a sickening thud. The third ranger, whose name Emma didn't know, backed away, his hands up. Whoa, we're done. We're done. Emma straightened, breathing evenly, and looked down at Donovan. He was still on the floor, tears streaming down his face, his hand a mangled mess. The bartender was on the phone now, probably calling the police. Emma knew she had maybe 2 minutes before things got complicated. She walked back to her booth, picked up the challenge coin, and then pulled out a second one from her pocket. This one was different, heavier, with a trident engraved on one side and the words Naval Special Warfare Development Group on the other. She walked back to Donovan and crouched down beside him. His eyes were wide, unfocused, swimming with pain and confusion. You wanted to know what makes me strong, she said quietly. She placed both coins on the floor next to him. It's not what you think. It's knowing when to hold back, when to show mercy. Your problem is you never learned that lesson. She stood up and walked toward the door. Behind her, she could hear Donovan's friends helping him to his feet, their voices frantic and scared. Emma pushed open the door and stepped out into the cool night air. Her cheek was swelling where Keller had hit her, and her lip was still bleeding. But she felt calm, centered like she always did after a fight. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from a number she didn't recognize. Training exercise tomorrow. Oh, 600. You're the instructor. Emma smiled and put the phone away. Donovan and his friends had no idea what was coming. But they would learn. Oh, they would definitely learn. Inside the bar, Donovan finally managed to stand with Martinez's help. His hand was throbbing, each pulse of pain sending waves of nausea through his body. He looked down at the 2 challenge coins on the floor and he felt his stomach drop. What the hell just happened? Keller gasped, still trying to catch his breath. Martinez picked up one of the coins and turned it over in his hand. His face went pale as he read the inscription. Don, do you know what this is? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Donovan shook his head, unable to speak. This is a DevGru coin, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. That's SEAL Team 6, man. That girl, she's not just some random person. Donovan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. SEAL Team 6, the most elite special operations unit in the entire military. And he just slapped one of their operators in the face. Oh God, he whispered. Oh God, what did I do? The bartender came over, his expression grim. Cops are on their way. You boys want to explain what happened here. But Donovan wasn't listening. He was staring at the door where Emma had disappeared, his mind racing with the implications of what he'd just done. He'd picked a fight with a Navy SEAL, a DevGru operator, someone who had probably seen more combat, more real violence than he could ever imagine. And she let him hit her, had let his friend hit her. Why? The answer came to him slowly, painfully. She'd wanted witnesses, wanted to make sure everyone saw that she'd given them every chance to walk away, that they had been the aggressors. She'd been in control the entire time. Donovan sank back to the floor, his injured hand forgotten for the moment. His entire world had just shifted, and he didn't know how to process it. Keller sat down next to him, his face still flushed from lack of oxygen. We're screwed, aren't we? Donovan didn't answer. He just stared at the coins on the floor and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Outside, Emma walked to her car and sat in the driver's seat. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror. Her cheek was already turning purple, and her lip had finally stopped bleeding. She looked like she'd been in a bar fight, which technically she had, but she felt good, felt alive in a way she hadn't in months. She started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward the small apartment she rented off base. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. She'd been asked to lead a training exercise for a group of Rangers to show them what real combat looked like, what real operators were capable of. She hadn't known who the Rangers would be, but now she did. Emma smiled to herself as she drove through the empty streets. Donovan Thatcher was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life, and she was going to enjoy every second of teaching it to him. The night was quiet, the stars hidden behind clouds, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Emma turned on the radio and let the music wash over her, her mind already planning tomorrow's training. It would be brutal, it would be humiliating, and it would be exactly what Donovan and his friends needed. Because the hardest part of being strong wasn't the fighting, it wasn't the training or the deployments or the missions that kept you up at night. It was knowing when to hold back, when to show mercy, when to let someone walk away, even though every instinct in your body screamed for you to finish them. Emma had learned that lesson the hard way through years of blood and sweat and loss. And now it was Donovan's turn to learn. She pulled into her parking spot and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. Emma sat there for a long moment, her hands on the steering wheel, and thought about her father, about the coin he'd given her, about the lessons he'd taught her before cancer took him away. Thanks, Dad, she whispered to the empty car, for everything. Then she got out, locked the door, and walked into her apartment. Tomorrow would come soon enough. And when it did, Donovan Thatcher would wish he'd never laid eyes on her. Donovan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's face, saw the blood on her chin, saw those dark eyes staring at him with an expression he still couldn't name. His hand was wrapped in a makeshift splint that Martinez had fashioned from duct tape and a ruler they'd found in the bar's back office. The emergency room doctor had reset his fingers, given him painkillers that barely touched the edge of his agony, and told him he was lucky nothing was broken worse than it was. Lucky. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. At 0530, his alarm went off. Donovan sat up in his bunk, his hand throbbing with each heartbeat, and stared at the wall. Around him, the barracks were coming alive with the sounds of men getting ready for morning PT. Keller was in the shower, still moving gingerly from where Emma had hit him. Martinez was sitting on his bunk, lacing up his boots with methodical precision that spoke of deep worry. "You think they know?" Martinez asked without looking up. Donovan knew exactly what he meant. "I don't know. The cops let us go. Didn't even file a report. That bartender, he just looked at those coins and told them it was a misunderstanding." "That's not good," Keller said from the bathroom doorway, water still dripping from his hair. "That means someone made a call, someone with enough pull to make assault charges disappear." Donovan's stomach churned. He'd been in the military long enough to know how things worked. When charges disappeared, it wasn't because you were off the hook. It was because someone wanted to handle things their own way. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Training exercise, briefing room C 0600, don't be late." He showed it to Martinez and Keller. Both men went pale. "It's her," Martinez whispered. "It has to be." At 0555, Donovan and his team stood outside briefing room C. There were 12 of them in total, and all Rangers, all combat veterans. They'd been told this was a special training exercise, an opportunity to learn from an elite operator. The kind of thing that could make or break a career. The door opened. A Colonel Donovan didn't recognize stepped out. "Gentlemen inside, now!" They filed in, boots echoing on the linoleum floor. The room was standard military issue, fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a podium at the front. But standing next to the podium was Emma. Donovan's breath caught in his throat. She was in full combat gear, her face clean of makeup, her hair pulled back tight. The bruise on her cheek from Keller's punch was dark purple, almost black, and her split lip had scabbed over. She looked small, standing there, barely coming up to the colonel's shoulder. But her eyes, God, her eyes were different now. There was no warmth in them, no mercy. They swept across the room, cataloging each man with the cold precision of a hunter counting prey. When her gaze landed on Donovan, he felt his knees go weak. "Take your seats," the colonel said. They did. Donovan ended up in the front row, directly in Emma's line of sight. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. The colonel cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, this is Chief Warrant Officer Emma Kincaid. She's on loan to us from Naval Special Warfare Development Group. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means she's SEAL Team 6. She's participated in operations I can't name in countries I can't mention. She's here to teach you what real combat looks like." One of the Rangers in the back, a guy named Thompson, who hadn't been at the bar, raised his hand. "Sir, no disrespect, but she's—" "Careful!" The colonel interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. "Finish that sentence, and you'll be running laps until you puke." Thompson's mouth snapped shut. Emma stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like a whip crack. "Last night, 3 men assaulted me in a bar. They outnumbered me 4-1. They were bigger, stronger, and they had surprise on their side." She paused, letting that sink in. "They're in this room right now." Every head turned to look at Donovan, Martinez, and Keller. Donovan felt his face burn with shame. "I'm going to tell you what they did wrong," Emma continued, "and then I'm going to show you what happens when you underestimate your enemy." She walked over to Donovan. He forced himself to meet her eyes. "Stand up," she said. He did, his legs shaking. "Show everyone your hand." Donovan held up his splinted hand. The fingers were swollen purple, twice their normal size. "I did that in less than 2 seconds," Emma said to the room. "No warning, no hesitation, just muscle memory and training." Staff Sergeant Thatcher here thought because I was small, because I was alone, because I looked vulnerable, that I was an easy target. What he didn't know was that I've been training to kill people since I was 18 years old. What he didn't know was that I've been in more firefights than everyone in this room combined. She turned back to Donovan. "Sit down." He collapsed into his chair, relief and humiliation warring in his chest. Emma faced the room again. "Today's exercise is simple. You're going to hunt me, all 12 of you. We're going to go out to the training grounds, and I'm going to give you a 5-minute head start to set up defensive positions. Then I'm going to come for you. If you can stop me from reaching the objective, you win. If I reach it, you lose." Thompson raised his hand again. "What's the objective?" Emma smiled, and it was the coldest thing Donovan had ever seen. "Me standing in the middle of your defensive position holding a flag. Non-lethal rounds only. Paintball markers. But everything else is fair game." The colonel stepped forward. "This is a learning opportunity, gentlemen. Chief Kincaid has agreed to walk you through her tactics afterward, show you where you went wrong. I suggest you pay attention." 20 minutes later, they were on the training grounds. It was a sprawling area designed to simulate urban combat, concrete buildings, narrow alleys, open courtyards. The 12 Rangers spread out, setting up overlapping fields of fire. establishing communication protocols, doing everything their training had taught them. Donovan was positioned on a rooftop with Martinez, both of them armed with paintball rifles. His hand made it hard to hold the weapon steady, but he managed. "This is insane," Martinez muttered. "She's one person. We're 12. We've got high ground superior numbers, and we know she's coming." "She took down 3 of us in a bar," Donovan reminded him, "in less than a minute. That was different. We were drunk, stupid. This is combat. Our home turf." Donovan wanted to believe him. He really did. Their radio crackled. 5 minutes up. She's moving." Donovan scanned the approaches to their position. Nothing. Just empty streets and silent buildings. "Where is she?" Martinez whispered. Then Thompson's voice came over the radio, panicked and sharp. "Contact east of the cheese." The transmission cut off with a wet thump. "Thompson's down." Someone else reported. "I didn't even see her." 1 second, he was there, the next. Another thump. Silence. 2 down. Martinez breathed. In less than 30 seconds. Donovan's heart was racing. He swept his rifle across the rooftops, the windows, the alleys. Where was she? A third voice came through the radio. "I've got eyes on her. She's in the..." A sharp crack, then nothing. 3 down, Donovan said. His mouth was dry. Keller's voice came through next. "She's moving through the buildings, using the shadows. I can barely track her." "Take the shot," someone yelled. "I can't get it clean." Keller's transmission ended with a grunt of pain. 4 down. Martinez grabbed Donovan's shoulder. "We need to reposition. Now." They started moving across the rooftop, keeping low. Below them, Donovan could hear shouts, the pop of paintball markers firing, then silence. One by one, their teammates were being eliminated. 5 down, 6, 7. "This isn't possible," Martinez gasped. "She's one person." 8 down. They reached the edge of the rooftop. Below was a narrow alley, then another building. If they could cross, they might be able to set up a better position. Might be able to... Emma dropped from the sky. She'd been on the building above them, had timed her drop perfectly. She landed between Donovan and Martinez, rolled, came up with her paintball marker already raised. Martinez fired first. Emma twisted the paintball, missing her by inches, and shot him twice in the chest. He went down with a groan, paint splattered across his vest. Donovan swung his rifle around, but his injured hand betrayed him. The weapon slipped, and in that half second of distraction, Emma was on him. She kicked the rifle out of his grip, swept his legs, and had him on his back before he could process what was happening. Her paintball marker pressed against his chest. "Bang," she said quietly. Then she was gone, moving across the rooftop like smoke. Donovan lay there, paint spreading across his vest, and listened to the rest of his team get picked off one by one. 9 down, 10, 11, 12. The whole thing had taken less than 8 minutes. When Donovan finally sat up, he saw Emma standing in the center of the courtyard holding the flag. She wasn't even breathing hard. The colonel's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Exercise complete. All personnel report to the debriefing room." They gathered in a classroom, paint splattered and humiliated. Emma stood at the front, her expression neutral. "You want to know what you did wrong?" she asked. No one answered. "You thought like soldiers. Conventional tactics. Overlapping fields of fire. Defensive positions. All good strategies if you're fighting an enemy who plays by the same rules." She paused. "I don't play by those rules." She pulled up a tactical map on the screen behind her. "Thompson, you were the first to go down. You called out my position on the radio, which told me exactly where your communication hub was. I eliminated you first to sow confusion." Thompson looked at the floor. "Jenkins and Ramirez, you were next. You both focused on where I had been, not where I was going. You tracked my last known position instead of anticipating my next move." She went through each elimination, breaking down the tactical mistakes, showing them how she'd exploited their training against them. "Keller, you hesitated. You had a shot, a clean shot, but you waited trying to make it perfect. In combat, perfect gets you killed. Good enough keeps you alive." Keller nodded, his face tight. "Donovan and Martinez, you made the mistake of assuming I couldn't reach you on that rooftop. You forgot to watch above. Always watch above." Donovan felt the weight of his failure settling on his shoulders. Emma turned off the screen. "Here's what you need to understand. Size doesn't matter. Numbers don't matter. What matters is training adaptability and the willingness to do what your enemy thinks is impossible. You all fought well. You used good tactics. But you fought the enemy you expected, not the enemy you had." The colonel stood up. "Chief Consincade has agreed to run this exercise again tomorrow. And the day after that, and every day for the next 2 weeks. By the time she's done with you, you'll be thinking like Tier 1 operators instead of conventional soldiers." A hand went up. It was Martinez. "Chief, can I ask you something?" Emma nodded. Last night in the bar, you let Keller hit you. Why? The room went silent. Emma's expression didn't change. Because I needed witnesses to see that I gave you every opportunity to walk away. Because I needed the legal high ground. And because I wanted to see if you'd pull your punch when you realized what you were doing. Did I? Keller asked quietly. No, you put everything you had into it. She touched her bruised cheek, which told me everything I needed to know about your character. The words hung in the air like a condemnation. The colonel dismissed them. As they filed out, Donovan hung back. Chief, he said. Emma looked at him. I'm sorry for what I did, for all of it. Emma studied him for a long moment. Sorry doesn't mean anything. Change means something. Show me you've learned, and maybe that apology will be worth something. And she walked past him, leaving Donovan standing alone in the empty classroom. That night, lying in his bunk, Donovan thought about everything that had happened. The bar, the training exercise, Emma's words. He'd spent his entire career thinking he was a warrior, thinking his ranger tab and combat deployments made him special. But Emma had shown him the difference between being a good soldier and being an elite operator. It wasn't about strength or even courage. It was about mindset, about seeing the world not as it was, but as it could be, about turning every disadvantage into an advantage. His phone buzzed, another text from the unknown number. Tomorrow, 600. We're going again. This time I'm giving you 10 minutes instead of 5. Use them wisely. Donovan showed the text to Martinez. She's giving us a handicap, Martinez said. No, Donovan replied, finally understanding. She's showing us that even with twice the prep time, we're still going to lose. She's teaching us humility. Think we'll ever beat her. Donovan looked at his splinted hand, thought about how easily she dismantled 12 combat-trained rangers, thought about the look in her eyes when she'd stood in that courtyard holding the flag. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm going to try like hell to make her work for it. Martinez managed a weak smile. That's something at least. The lights went out. In the darkness, Donovan heard the sounds of men shifting in their bunks, trying to find sleep that wouldn't come easy. They were all thinking the same thing. They'd underestimated Emma Kincaid. They'd seen a small woman and assumed a weakness. They'd seen vulnerability and assumed prey. They'd learned the hardest lesson a soldier could learn: appearances meant nothing. Training meant everything, and the most dangerous enemy was the one you didn't see coming. Tomorrow they'd try again. They'd fail again. But maybe, just maybe, they'd fail a little less. They'd learn a little more. They'd become a little better. Because that's what Emma was really teaching them. Not tactics, not combat techniques. She was teaching them that growth came from failure, that strength came from humility, that the best warriors were the ones who never stopped learning. Donovan closed his eyes and tried to sleep. His hand throbbed. His pride ached worse. But for the first time since he'd walked into that bar, he felt something other than shame. He felt determination. Day 2 started before dawn. Donovan was already awake when the alarm went off at 0500, his hand still throbbing despite the pain medication. He'd spent the night planning, thinking through every mistake they'd made, trying to anticipate Emma's next move. Martinez was awake too, sitting on the edge of his bunk with a notebook full of tactical diagrams. I think I figured it out, Martinez said without preamble. Yesterday she used our communication against us. So today we go radio silent, hand signals only. Donovan shook his head. She'll expect that. She'll know we learned from yesterday. So what do? We use the radios, but we feed her false information. Make her think we're setting up in one position when we're actually somewhere else. Keller emerged from the bathroom, his face grim. That assumes she's listening to our comms. What if she's not? She is, Donovan said with certainty. She's a SEAL. Intelligence gathering is half the job. She's listening to everything. At 0545, they assembled outside briefing room C again. This time Emma was already waiting for them. The bruise on her cheek had darkened overnight, spreading across her cheekbone like spilled ink. She looked even smaller in the morning light, more fragile somehow, but Donovan knew better now. 10-minute head start today, she said without preamble. Same objective, same rules. Any questions? Thompson raised his hand. Chief, are you going to use the same tactics as yesterday? Emma's eyes gleamed. What do you think, Thompson? I think you're going to change it up. Keep us guessing. Smart, but wrong. I'm going to do exactly what I did yesterday. Same approach, same techniques, same entry points. The question is whether you've learned enough to stop me. The Rangers exchanged glances. Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. She was telling them her plan and still confident they couldn't stop her. That was either supreme arrogance or absolute certainty. He was betting on the latter. They deployed to the training grounds. This time, Donovan insisted on a different strategy. Instead of spreading out, they clustered in 3 groups of 4, each covering a different approach to the objective. They set up overlapping fields of fire, but kept the groups close enough to support each other. Radio discipline, Donovan reminded everyone. We use the comms to feed her bad intel, make her think we're weaker than we are. Martinez nodded and keyed his radio. This is Martinez. I'm setting up on the east rooftop. I've got one other guy with me. West side is empty over. In reality, Martinez had 4 men with him, and the west side had a full team dug in. The 10 minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Donovan's heart hammered in his chest. His hand ached. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool morning air. Time's up, crackled over the loudspeaker. Chief Consincade is moving. Donovan held his breath. They'd planned for this. They'd adapted. They'd learned. 30 seconds passed. A minute. 2 minutes. Nothing. Where is she? Keller whispered into his radio. Then Thompson's voice calm and controlled. I've got movement. South approach. She's using the same route as yesterday. Donovan felt a surge of hope. They'd predicted this. They had 3 men waiting at that exact position. Taking the shot, Thompson said. 3 paintball markers fired in unison. Donovan heard the impacts, heard Thompson's triumphant shout. Got her direct hit, she's down. The radio erupted with cheers. Donovan allowed himself a small smile. They'd done it. They'd actually negative. Emma's voice came through the radio and Donovan's blood turned to ice. She'd hacked their frequency. That was a decoy. Nice try, though. Before anyone could respond, the real assault began. Emma hit them from the north, the one approach they'd left weakest because her pattern yesterday had never taken her that direction. She came through a blind spot in their coverage, moving fast and low. Ramirez went down first, never even got his marker up. Jenkins was next eliminated while trying to reposition. North side, north side. Donovan screamed into the radio, abandoning the deception. She's coming from the north. Martinez and his team wheeled around trying to bring their weapons to bear, but Emma was already past them. She moved through the training ground like water flowing around the obstacles, using every piece of cover. Thompson tried to cut her off. Emma didn't slow down. She fired on the move 2 quick shots that caught him in the chest and shoulder. He stumbled back, swearing. She's heading for the center, Keller shouted. Cut her off! 6 Rangers converged on Emma's position from 3 different angles. For a moment, Donovan thought they had her. She was boxed in, nowhere to go. 6 markers pointed at her from 3 directions. Emma looked up at the building beside her, then at the Rangers closing in. She smiled. Then she threw a smoke grenade. The training ground erupted in thick white smoke. Donovan couldn't see 3 feet in front of his face. He heard shots, heard men shouting, heard the thud of bodies hitting the ground. When the smoke cleared 15 seconds later, Emma was standing in the center of the objective area holding the flag. 4 more Rangers were down, paint covering their gear. That left only Donovan and Martinez. They were positioned on opposite sides of the courtyard, both with clear shots at Emma. She stood between them, perfectly exposed, the flag in one hand. Take the shot, Martinez yelled. Donovan sighted down his marker. Emma didn't move, didn't even raise her weapon. She just stood there waiting. Something felt wrong. Donovan's finger hovered over the trigger. Shoot her, Martinez screamed. Donovan fired. So did Martinez. Both paintballs flew true, both headed straight for Emma's center mass. She dropped the flag and moved. Her hands came up, and impossibly she caught both paintballs mid-flight. The impact had to hurt, had to sting her palms, but her face showed nothing. Then she threw them back. The paintballs hit Donovan and Martinez simultaneously, exploding across their chests. Exercise complete, the loudspeaker announced. Donovan stood there, staring at the paint on his vest, his mind refusing to process what had just happened. She'd caught their shots, had physically caught paintballs moving at over 200 feet per second and thrown them back. That's not possible, Martinez whispered. Emma picked up the flag. Possible is just a word people use when they can't imagine the alternative. The debriefing was brutal. Emma broke down every mistake, every hesitation, every moment where they thought like conventional soldiers instead of adaptive operators. The decoy was good, she admitted. Smart thinking. But you assumed I wouldn't check. You assumed I'd take the bait without verifying. Never assume your enemy is stupider than you are. She pulled up footage from the exercise. Somehow she'd had cameras recording everything. Watch here, Donovan, you had a clean shot at me when I came through the north approach. You didn't take it. Why? Donovan swallowed hard. I thought it was another decoy. It wasn't. I was exposed for a full 2 seconds. That's an eternity in combat. You hesitated because you were afraid of making a mistake. Fear is good. It keeps you alive. But paralysis gets you killed. She moved to the next clip. Martinez, you repositioned 3 times during the engagement. Each time you moved to what you thought was a better tactical position. Each time you left your teammates without support. Stop thinking about where you should be and start thinking about where your team needs you to be. The criticism continued for an hour. By the end, Donovan felt like he'd been stripped down to his bones. Every flaw, every weakness, every bad habit laid bare. But Emma wasn't done. "Tomorrow we're changing the exercise," she said. "You're not hunting me anymore. I'm hunting you. You'll have the entire training ground to hide in. If you can evade me for 30 minutes, you win. If I tag even one of you, you all lose." Thompson's hand shot up. "Chief, that's impossible. The training ground is huge." "Is it?" Emma asked. "Or are you just not thinking creatively enough?" She dismissed them. As they filed out, Donovan felt the weight of impending failure settling on his shoulders. 2 days, 2 complete defeats. Emma had barely broken a sweat either time. He was starting to understand why SEAL Team 6 was considered the pinnacle of special operations. It wasn't about physical ability, it was about mindset, about seeing possibilities where others saw limitations. That afternoon, Donovan found himself in the base gym, working through his frustration on a heavy bag despite his injured hand. Each punch sent lightning bolts of pain up his arm, but he didn't stop. "You're going to make that worse," Emma's voice came from behind him. Donovan spun around. She was in PT gear, her hair down for once, looking more like the college student he had seen in the bar than the operator who'd demolished his team twice. "I need to be ready for tomorrow," he said. "No, you need to heal. Injured operators are dead operators." She walked over to the bag and held it steady. "Hit it properly. You're favoring your good hand, which throws off your balance." Donovan threw another punch. Emma shook her head. "Again. And this time use your whole body, not just your arm." He did. The punch felt cleaner, more powerful. Better. Again. They worked like that for 20 minutes, Emma correcting his form, teaching him how to generate power from his core instead of his shoulders. Donovan found himself relaxing, found the anger and frustration draining away. "Can I ask you something?" he said during a water break. Emma nodded. "Why are you really here? This isn't about teaching us tactics. You could do that in a classroom." Emma took a long drink from her water bottle. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. 3 months ago, I lost someone on a mission, my spotter. His name was Marcus Reeves. He was 26 years old, had a wife and a baby daughter he'd never met because we deployed before she was born. Donovan felt his chest tighten. Marcus died because he hesitated. We were extracting a high-value target from a compound in Syria. Marcus had a shot at a hostile, but the hostile was young, looked like a kid. Marcus waited half a second to confirm the threat. That half second cost him his life. The hostile was wearing a suicide vest. Emma's eyes were distant, seeing something Donovan couldn't. Marcus was a good operator, one of the best, but he'd been trained to see enemies as enemies, not as individuals. When he saw someone who looked like a kid, his training failed him. His humanity got in the way of his survival instinct. "I'm sorry," Donovan said, the words feeling inadequate. "Don't be sorry. Learn. That's why I'm here. I'm teaching you to see past the obvious, to trust your training, even when your brain is screaming at you to hesitate. I'm teaching you to be better than Marcus was, to be better than I was, because I should have taken that shot when he didn't." She stood up. "Tomorrow when I'm hunting you, I want you to think about Marcus. Think about what it means to be the hunter and the hunted. Think about how quickly everything can change." That night, Donovan couldn't sleep again. He kept thinking about Marcus Reeves, about a man he'd never met who died because he was too human. It seemed impossibly cruel, the idea that compassion could be a fatal flaw. But he understood what Emma was teaching them. In combat, there was no room for hesitation, no room for doubt. You acted or you died. You trusted your training or you became a casualty. His phone buzzed, another message from Emma's number. Marcus would have liked you. He was a ranger before he became a SEAL. He understood what it meant to be part of a team. Don't let him down tomorrow. Donovan stared at the message for a long time. Then he got out of bed and started planning. If Emma wanted them to think creatively, to see possibilities instead of limitations, then that's exactly what he'd do. He woke Martinez and Keller. "Get everyone up. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, all 12 Rangers were crowded into their common room, bleary-eyed and confused. "Emma said she's hunting us tomorrow," Donovan began. "She said if we can evade her for 30 minutes, we win. But she's not going to make it easy. She's going to use everything she knows about tracking, about hunting, about psychological warfare." "So what's your plan?" Thompson asked. "We don't evade her. We hunt her back." The room erupted in protest. Donovan held up his hand. "Listen, every exercise so far, we've been reactive. We've responded to her attacks, tried to defend against her moves. But she's better at offense than we are at defense. So we change the game. We make her react to us for once." Martinez leaned forward. "How?" "We split into 3 groups. 2 groups hide, make themselves obvious targets. The 3rd group shadows them, waiting for Emma to make her move. When she goes after the bait, we collapse on her from behind." Keller shook his head. "She'll see through that in a second." Maybe, but she's been teaching us to think differently to see possibilities. What if she expects us to finally learn that lesson? What if she's waiting for us to stop being predictable? The room fell silent as they considered this. It's risky, Martinez said finally. If we're wrong, we lose even faster than before. We're going to lose anyway, Donovan said flatly. She's better than us. Faster, smarter, more experienced. But maybe, just maybe, we can surprise her. And even if we fail, we'll fail doing something unexpected. That's worth something, isn't it? Thompson stood up. I'm in. Let's show her we can learn. One by one, the others nodded. They spent the rest of the night planning, arguing, refining their strategy. By the time the sun rose, they had a plan. It probably wouldn't work. Emma would probably see through it immediately. But it was theirs. It was creative. It was exactly the kind of thinking Emma had been trying to teach them. At 0600, they stood in the training ground ready to begin. Emma looked at them with those dark, knowing eyes. 30 minutes, she said, starting now. The Rangers scattered. Donovan ran with Martinez and Keller toward the eastern section of the training ground. Behind them, two other groups headed west and south. The fourth group, the shadows melted into the buildings and disappeared. Donovan's heart hammered as they set up their position. They were exposed, obvious, practically begging Emma to come after them. She's going to know, Martinez whispered. I know, Donovan replied, but she's going to come anyway, because she wants to see if we'll follow through. They waited. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15, nothing. 20 minutes and Donovan started to wonder if Emma had seen through their plan and was simply waiting them out. If she stayed hidden for 30 minutes, they'd win by default, but somehow he knew she wouldn't let that happen. 25 minutes. Then Keller's radio crackled with a voice that didn't belong to any of them. Nicely done, gentlemen. You're thinking like operators now, but you made one critical mistake. Emma's voice was calm, almost proud. What mistake? Donovan whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. You assumed I'd come alone. The training ground's loudspeakers came alive with new voices. 4 other DevGru operators had been watching the entire time, hidden so well that none of the Rangers had spotted them. They'd been evaluating, assessing, waiting to see how the Rangers would perform. And now they were moving in. New objective, Emma's voice continued. Survive the next 5 minutes against 5 Tier 1 operators. If even one of you is still standing, when time's up, you win. Donovan looked at Martinez and Keller saw his own shock reflected in their faces. This wasn't an exercise anymore. This was a graduation test, and it was about to get very, very real. The first DevGru operator hit their position within seconds. He came from above, rappelling down from a rooftop they hadn't even considered checking. Donovan barely had time to register the movement before Thompson was down, paint exploding across his back. Contact high, Keller screamed, swinging his marker up, but the operator was already gone, vanished into the shadows like he'd never been there. Donovan's radio erupted with panicked voices. The Western team was under assault, voices overlapping in chaos. Someone was screaming about flanking movements. Someone else went silent mid-sentence. We need to regroup, Martinez shouted, already moving toward the center of the training ground. No, Donovan grabbed his shoulder. That's what they want. They're herding us together so they can take us all at once. Then what do we... Donovan's mind raced. 5 operators, 12 Rangers. The numbers were in their favor, but the skill gap was astronomical. Every DevGru operator in this exercise had years of combat experience, had hunted actual terrorists in actual war zones. The Rangers were good, but they were outmatched. Unless they stopped fighting like Rangers and started fighting like SEALs. We split up, Donovan said. Make ourselves harder to track, force them to spread out. That's suicide, Keller protested. So is staying together. At least this way, some of us might survive. Another scream cut through the radio. The Southern team was down to 1 man. Donovan made a decision. Keller, you go east. Martinez west. I'm heading north. Move fast, stay low, and don't engage unless you have no choice. The goal is survival, not victory. They separated. Donovan ran through the training ground, his injured hand throbbing with each jarring step. Behind him, he heard the pop of paintball markers, heard men shouting, heard the systematic elimination of his team. He ducked into a building, pressed himself against the wall, and tried to control his breathing. Through a broken window, he could see 2 Rangers pinned down by a single operator. The SEAL was playing with them, firing from different positions, making them think there were multiple hostiles. So he stands. Donovan watched one of the Rangers panic and break cover. The operator dropped him with a single shot. The second Ranger tried to run. The operator let him get 10 feet before eliminating him with a shot to the back. Clinical, efficient, merciless. Donovan's radio crackled. 8 down, it was Emma's voice. 4 minutes remaining. Only 4 Rangers left. Donovan, Martinez, Keller, and one other whose voice he hadn't heard in the chaos. Donovan moved deeper into the building, climbing stairs, trying to get elevation. If he could find a high position, maybe he could see the operators moving, could warn the others. He reached the third floor and peered out a window. Below, he saw movement. Not a DevGru operator. Martinez running between buildings, trying to stay ahead of whoever was hunting him. Then Donovan saw her. Emma moving parallel to Martinez, matching his pace, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She was herding him toward a dead end, toward a courtyard with no exits. Donovan keyed his radio. "Martinez, stop. You're being funneled." Martinez froze, looked around, saw the trap. He started to backtrack, but another operator appeared behind him. Martinez was boxed in. He did the only thing he could. He charged Emma. It was brave and stupid, and exactly what a ranger would do. Martinez fired as he ran paintballs flying wild. Emma didn't even try to dodge. She walked straight toward him, letting the shots miss, and when Martinez was close enough, she sidestepped his tackle and swept his legs. Martinez went down hard. Emma's marker was on him before he hit to the ground. 9 down, she said into the radio. 3 minutes. Donovan pulled back from the window, his heart hammering. 3 Rangers left. 3 minutes. The math was simple and brutal. His radio crackled again. This time it wasn't Emma, it was Keller. "I've got eyes on one of them. 3rd building from the north entrance, 2nd floor." Donovan's breath caught. Keller had spotted an operator. That meant he might have a shot. "Don't engage," Donovan whispered into the radio. "Stay hidden." "Negative, so I'm taking the shot. If we don't fight back, we've already lost." "Keller, don't." The sound of a paintball marker firing echoed through the training ground. Then silence. Long, terrible silence. "Keller," Donovan whispered. No response. 10 down, a voice came through the radio. Not Emma this time. A male voice, deep and amused. 2 minutes, 2 Rangers. I like those odds. Donovan felt panic rising in his throat. He was alone. No, not alone. There was one other Ranger out there, someone whose identity he didn't even know. He had to move. Staying in one place was death. Donovan started down the stairs, moving as quietly as his boots would allow. He reached the 2nd floor when he heard footsteps above him. Someone was on the 3rd floor, the floor he'd just left. Donovan pressed himself into a doorway and held his breath. The footsteps moved slowly, methodically, checking each room. They were coming closer. He had 2 choices. Hide and hope he wasn't found, or run and hope he was faster. Donovan ran. He burst out of the building into an alley, sprinting for the next piece of cover. Behind him, he heard a shout, heard the pop of a paintball marker. Something whistled past his ears so close he felt the air displacement. He dove behind a concrete barrier, rolled, came up running. Another shot. This one hit the ground where he'd been a second before. "You're fast," Emma's voice called out. "Faster than I expected, but you're running out of room." Donovan looked around. She was right. He'd run himself into a section of the training ground with limited exits. The buildings formed a natural funnel, and Emma was at the wide end pushing him toward the narrow. He could see her now walking toward him with that same calm expression she'd worn in the bar. No rush, no urgency, just patient, inevitable pursuit. 1 minute 30, she said. "You've done well, Donovan. Better than I thought you would after that first night." "Where's the other Ranger?" Donovan asked, stalling for time. Emma smiled. "Eliminated 20 seconds ago. You're the last one." Donovan's heart sank. He was alone against 5 Tier 1 operators. The exercise was over. He'd lost. But Emma had taught him something over the past 3 days. The exercise wasn't over until the timer hit 0, or he was tagged. Every second he survived was a small victory. Every moment he stayed in the fight was proof he'd learned something. He started moving again, not running this time, but walking, conserving energy, thinking. Emma matched his pace. "What are you doing, Donovan?" "Surviving," he said. "Oh, and by walking, I could tag you right now. But you won't, because you want to see what I'll do next." Emma's smile widened. "Smart. You're finally thinking like an operator. So what will you do next?" Donovan reached a corner where 2 buildings met. He could go left toward a more open area or right into a tight corridor. Both were traps. Both would get him eliminated. 1 minute, Emma said. Donovan looked up. The buildings here were close together, maybe 8 feet apart. The walls were rough concrete full of handholds. He dropped his paintball marker. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "Changing the game." Donovan jumped, grabbed a window ledge with his good hand and started climbing. Pain screamed through his injured hand as he used it to steady himself, but he didn't stop. He went up fast, using techniques he'd learned in Ranger School, pushing through the agony. Emma watched him climb. She could have shot him easily. He was completely exposed. But she didn't fire. Donovan reached the roof and pulled himself over the edge. He looked down and saw Emma standing in the alley, her marker at her side, looking up at him with something that might have been respect. 45 seconds, she called up. Donovan started running across the rooftop. It was flat, covered in gravel that crunched under his boots. He could see the entire training ground from up here, could see the other 4 operators converging on his position. They'd been waiting for Emma to flush him out. Now they were moving in for the kill. Donovan reached the edge of the roof. The next building was 10 feet away, too far to jump safely. But there was a third building beyond it, closer, maybe 6 feet. 30 seconds. Emma's voice drifted up. Donovan backed up, got a running start, and launched himself across the gap. For a moment, he was airborne, the ground 3 stories below, nothing but empty space around him. His injured hands screamed as he landed. Rold came up running. 2 operators were on the adjacent rooftop, now closing in from both sides. Donovan was trapped between them. 20 seconds. He looked around frantically. There, a drainage pipe running down the side of the building. It looked old, probably couldn't support his weight, but it was the only option. Donovan grabbed the pipe and started sliding down. The metal groaned, bolts pulling free from the wall. He was falling more than climbing, barely in control. He hit the ground hard, his ankle twisting, pain shooting up his leg. But he was down, was moving, was still in the fight. 10 seconds. Donovan limped toward the objective marker, the flag they'd been defending on the first day. If he could just reach it, could just touch it, maybe that would count as something. Maybe Emma would see that he'd refused to give up, had kept fighting until the last possible second. 5 operators appeared around him, forming a circle. Emma stepped forward from the group. 5 seconds, she said softly. Donovan kept moving toward the flag, dragging his injured ankle, refusing to stop. 4. He was 3 feet away. 3. 2 feet. 2. He reached out with his good hand. 1. His fingers touched the flag. Time, Emma said. The loudspeaker confirmed it. Exercise complete. Donovan collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, his entire body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. He'd lost. All 12 Rangers had been eliminated. But he'd survived the full 5 minutes. He'd made it to the end. Emma walked over and extended her hand. Donovan looked up at her, saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Pride. He took her hand and let her help him to his feet. That was good work, she said. All of you. You adapted, you thought creatively, you refused to quit. That's what I wanted to see. The other Rangers were emerging from where they'd been eliminated, paint-covered, but grinning. They'd lost, but they'd learned. They'd been pushed beyond anything they thought they were capable of, and they'd survived. The colonel appeared from the observation post. Gentlemen, gather round. They assembled a ragged group of exhausted, paint-splattered soldiers. The colonel looked at each of them in turn. Over the past 3 days, Chief Consincate has put you through hell. She's beaten you in every engagement, exploited every weakness, shown you how much you still have to learn. He paused. But she's also shown me that you have potential. Real potential. When faced with impossible odds, you didn't quit. When confronted with an enemy you couldn't beat, you found ways to make them work for it. That's the mark of elite operators. Emma stepped forward. I'm recommending all 12 of you for advanced training. If you accept, you'll spend the next 6 months learning everything DevGru knows about unconventional warfare, tactical operations, and adaptive combat. It will make these 3 days look like a vacation. Most of you will wash out, but those who make it through will be better soldiers than you ever imagined possible. Donovan felt his breath catch. Advanced training with SEAL Team 6 instructors. It was an opportunity most Rangers would kill for. There's one condition, Emma continued. Staff Sergeant Thatcher. Donovan stepped forward, his heart in his throat. You put your hands on me in anger. You assaulted a fellow service member. Under normal circumstances, that would end your career. Emma's eyes were hard. But I'm giving you a choice. You can accept non-judicial punishment, take the mark on your record, and continue your career as a Ranger. Or you can accept this training, prove that you've learned from your mistakes, and become something more. The weight of the decision settled on Donovan's shoulders. His career, his future, his entire identity hung in the balance. I accept the training, he said without hesitation. Emma nodded. Good. Report to my office at 1400. We need to talk about what happened that night. Really talk. No ranks, no military protocol, just 2 people dealing with the consequences of their actions. At 1400, Donovan stood outside Emma's temporary office. His hand was still splinted. His ankle was wrapped and every muscle in his body ached. He knocked. Come in. Emma was sitting behind a desk out of uniform for the first time Donovan had seen. She wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt, looked more like a grad student than a Tier 1 operator. Sit, she said. Donovan sat. Emma leaned back in her chair. Why did you hit me that night? The question was direct, blunt, demanding honesty. I was drunk. I was showing off for my friends. I saw someone I thought was weak, and I wanted to feel strong. The words tasted like poison. There's no excuse. I was wrong. Yes, you were. But wrong isn't the same as irredeemable. Emma pulled out the challenge coin her father had given her. My dad used to tell me that everyone has two wolves inside them. One is anger, ego, pride. The other is humility, discipline, honor. The wolf that wins is the one you feed. She set the coin on the desk between them. You fed the wrong wolf that night, but these past 3 days you've been feeding the right one. You've been humble enough to learn, disciplined enough to adapt, honorable enough to keep fighting even when you knew you'd lose. That's the man I'm training, not the drunk idiot in the bar. Donovan felt something loosen in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of redemption. I won't let you down, he said. I know you won't, because if you do, I'll make these 3 days look like paradise. Emma smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. Training starts Monday. Get some rest this weekend. You're going to need it. Donovan stood to leave, but Emma stopped him. One more thing. Marcus Reeves, the man I told you about, he made a mistake because he let his humanity override his training. But you know what? He was a better man for having that humanity. The trick is learning when to let it guide you and when to set it aside. That's the balance every good operator has to find. How do you find it? Donovan asked. Emma looked at the coin on her desk. You make mistakes. You learn. You try to be better tomorrow than you were today. That's all any of us can do. Donovan left the office feeling lighter than he had in days. The path ahead would be brutal. The training would break him down and build him back up. But for the first time since that night in the bar, he felt like he had a future worth fighting for. That evening, he called his mother. She answered on the second ring. Donovan, baby, is everything okay? Yeah, Mom, everything's okay. I just wanted to tell you something. What's that? I messed up really badly, but I'm fixing it. I'm going to be better. There was a long pause. Then his mother's voice, soft and proud. That's all I've ever wanted for you, baby. To be better than you were yesterday. They talked for an hour about nothing and everything, and when Donovan finally hung up, he felt like a weight had been lifted from his soul. He lay in his bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Emma and Marcus and the wolf you choose to feed. He thought about strength and weakness, about humility and honor, about the difference between being a good soldier and being a good man. Somewhere across the base, Emma was probably thinking about the same things. About the students she was shaping, about the man she'd lost, about the responsibility of passing on knowledge bought with blood and sacrifice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Monday would bring training that would test every limit Donovan thought he had. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of the barracks, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could become the kind of operator Emma saw potential in. The kind of man who fed the right wolf. Monday morning came with rain. Cold, merciless rain that turned the training ground into a muddy nightmare. Donovan stood with the 11 other Rangers outside a nondescript building at 0500 water, streaming down his face, his injured hand still splinted, but healing. Emma emerged from the building wearing full combat gear. Behind her were the 4 DevGru operators from Friday's exercise, plus 2 more Donovan didn't recognize. 6 Tier 1 operators, 12 Rangers. The ratio felt ominous. Welcome to selection, Emma said, her voice cutting through the rain. The next 6 months will determine whether you have what it takes to operate at the highest level. Most of you will quit. Some of you will be cut. A very few might make it through. She started walking, forcing them to follow. We're going to start with a simple exercise. A 12-mile ruck march. Full gear, 60-pound packs, weapons, the works. You have 2 hours and 30 minutes. If you fall behind, if you quit, if you can't keep pace, you're done. No second chances. Thompson raised his hand. Chief, my gear isn't. Then you're already behind. Figure it out or go home. Emma set a brutal pace. Within the first mile, Donovan's ankle was screaming. The splint on his hand made it nearly impossible to distribute the weight of his pack properly. Rain turned the trail into a slick, treacherous obstacle course. Martinez fell at mile 3, his knee buckling on a patch of mud. He got up, kept moving, but Donovan could see the pain in every step. At mile 5, one of the Rangers Donovan barely knew, a guy named Patterson, stopped walking. Just stopped. Emma circled back to him. You done? She asked. Patterson nodded, unable to speak. Then drop your pack and head back to base. You're out. Patterson dropped his gear and limped away. 11 Rangers left. Mile 7 was where it got truly brutal. The trail turned steep, climbing a hill that seemed to go on forever. Donovan's lungs burned. His legs felt like concrete. Every step was agony. Keller was struggling worse. His breathing was ragged, desperate. At mile 8, he collapsed. Emma stood over him. Get up. Keller tried. He got to his knees, then fell again. Get up or go home. I can't, Keller gasped. I can't do it. Emma's expression didn't change. Then you're out. Donovan wanted to help, wanted to say something, but he knew the rules. This was individual. You succeeded or failed on your own merit. Keller crawled to the side of the trail and sat there, head in his hands. 10 Rangers left. At mile 10, Donovan's vision started to blur. Dehydration, exhaustion, pain all combining into a haze that made it hard to think. He focused on Emma's back, on putting one foot in front of the other, on refusing to quit. They crossed the finish line at 2 hours and 28 minutes. 10 Rangers all still standing. Barely. Emma didn't give them time to recover. Weapons check. 90 seconds. If your rifle isn't clean and functional, you're out. Donovan's hands shook as he field stripped his weapon. The rain had gotten into everything. Mud caked the chamber. He worked frantically, using his shirt to wipe down components, his injured hand hampering every movement. Time, Emma called. She went down the line, inspecting each weapon. 2 Rangers failed. Their rifles had fouled chambers, carbon buildup that would cause malfunctions. Out, Emma said to both of them. Attention to detail keeps you alive. You just died. 8 Rangers remained. The next exercise was water survival. They were taken to a pool full combat gear, still on, and told to tread water for 20 minutes. No touching the sides, no floating on their backs, just vertical movement, keeping their heads above water, with 60 pounds of gear trying to drag them down. Martinez lasted 15 minutes before he started sinking. A safety instructor pulled him out. 7 Rangers left. Thompson made it 17 minutes before exhaustion claimed him. 6 left. Donovan's arms felt like lead. Water filled his nose every time he dipped below the surface. His injured hand was useless for propulsion. He kicked harder, pulled with his good arm, refused to let the weight drag him down. At 19 minutes and 45 seconds, his head went under. He couldn't get back up. The water closed over him, and for a moment Donovan thought this was it. This was where it ended. Then something grabbed at his vest and hauled him up. Emma. She jumped in and pulled him to the surface. 15 more seconds, she said. You can do 15 more seconds. Donovan kicked weakly, staying afloat more through will than strength. Emma tread water beside him, not helping, just present. Time, the safety instructor called. Donovan had made it. Barely, but he'd made it. They pulled themselves out of the pool, 6 Rangers soaked and shaking, standing in the rain, while Emma looked at them with something that might have been approval. Not bad, she said. You've got heart. Now let's see if you've got brains. The next test was navigation. They were given a map, a compass, and coordinates for 6 checkpoints spread across 20 miles of wilderness. They had 8 hours, no GPS, no communication devices, just their training and their wits. Donovan partnered with Martinez, who'd somehow convinced Emma to let him continue, despite failing the water survival. They moved through the forest, checking their compass every 100 meters, triangulating their position using terrain features. At the 3rd checkpoint, they found Thompson. He was sitting on the ground staring at his map with blank eyes. I'm lost, he admitted. I've been walking in circles for an hour. Donovan wanted to help, but Emma's words echoed in his mind. Individual effort, individual success or failure. Check your last known position, Donovan said. Work backwards from there. It wasn't direct help, just advice. Thompson nodded and went back to his map. Donovan and Martinez kept moving. They hit all 6 checkpoints with 30 minutes to spare. When they returned to base, only 4 other Rangers were there. Thompson never made it back. Neither did another Ranger whose name Donovan had never learned. 4 Rangers left. Donovan, Martinez, and 2 others named Chen and Rodriguez. Emma looked at them as they stood in the gathering darkness, exhausted beyond measure. Day 1 is completed, she said. You have 3 hours to eat, shower, and sleep. Then we start night operations. Chen collapsed, just fell over like someone had cut his strings. Medic, Emma called. She knelt beside Chen, checked his pulse. He's done, pushed too hard. He'll recover, but he's out of selection. 3 Rangers left. The night operations were worse than anything Donovan had imagined. They were given a target building and told to infiltrate it without being detected. Inside were the 6 DevGru operators acting as hostile forces with night vision and thermal imaging. If the Rangers were spotted, they failed. If they reached the objective, a mock intelligence package in the center of the building they passed. Rodriguez went in first. He made it 30 feet before a laser sight painted his chest. Failed. 2 Rangers left. Martinez went next. He used a different approach, slower, more methodical. He made it to the building, got through a window, moved through 2 rooms. Then a DevGru operator stepped out of the shadows and tagged him with a training knife. Dead, the operator said. Martinez had failed. Donovan was the last one. The only Ranger left out of 12 who'd started. The weight of that realization threatened to crush him. Emma appeared beside him in the darkness. You don't have to do this. You've already proven yourself. You can walk away with honor. Donovan looked at the building, at the impossible task, at the operators inside, who had decades of experience between them. Marcus Reeves wouldn't have walked away, he said. Emma was quiet for a moment. No, he wouldn't have. Then neither will I. Donovan approached the building from an angle none of the others had tried. Instead of going for windows or doors, he climbed. Using the same technique he'd used in Friday's exercise, he scaled the wall to the roof. The DevGru operators were expecting ground-level approaches. They weren't watching the roof as carefully. Donovan found a ventilation shaft. It was tight, barely wide enough for his shoulders, but it led down into the building. He squeezed inside, moving inch by inch through the metal duct. Below him, he could hear the operators talking, reviewing where Rodriguez and Martinez had failed adjusting their coverage to prevent the same approaches. Donovan reached a vent that opened into a hallway. He could see the objective room from here, could see one operator standing guard outside it. He waited. Patience was a weapon Emma had taught him. He waited until the operator shifted position, turning to check the other end of the hall. Donovan dropped from the vent, landed in a crouch, rolled into the objective room. The intelligence package was sitting on a table. He grabbed it and dove back out, sliding under a desk just as the operator turned around. The operator entered the room, saw the package was gone, and keyed his radio. "Package is compromised. Intruder is in the building." All 6 operators converged on the objective room. Donovan was trapped underneath a desk, barely breathing, holding the package against his chest. They searched the room. One operator's boot came within inches of Donovan's face, but they were looking for someone moving, someone trying to escape. They didn't think to check under the furniture. After 5 minutes, they spread out to search the rest of the building. Donovan waited another 10 minutes, then slowly, carefully crawled out from under the desk. He made his way back to the hallway, back to the vent he'd come through. But climbing up was harder than dropping down. His injured hand couldn't support his weight. He tried and once fell back. Tried again, fell again. He heard footsteps approaching. Donovan made a desperate decision. He ran, straight down the hallway toward the nearest exit, package in hand. An operator appeared in front of him. Donovan didn't slow down. He lowered his shoulder and hit the operator like a linebacker, using momentum and surprise to barrel past him. Another operator grabbed at him. Donovan twisted, broke free, kept running. The exit was 10 feet away, 5 feet. He burst through the door into the night air, still running, the package clutched in his good hand. Behind him, he heard Emma's voice on the loudspeaker. "Exercise complete. Objective secured." Donovan collapsed on the wet grass, gasping, trembling, unable to believe he'd actually done it. Emma walked over and extended her hand. Donovan took it, let her pull him up. "That was sloppy," she said. "I know. You got lucky at the end. If that operator had been faster, you would have failed. I know. But you adapted. You used an approach no one else thought of. You waited when you should have waited and moved when you had to move. That's what matters." She handed him something, his father's challenge coin, the one she'd left in the bar that night. "You've earned this back," Emma said. "Not because you're perfect, not because you're the best, but because you've proven you understand what it means to be strong. Real strength isn't about never failing. It's about getting up every time you fall. It's about learning from your mistakes. It's about knowing when to hold your power and when to use it." Donovan looked at the coin, at the worn metal that had belonged to his father, at the symbol of everything he'd been trying to live up to. "What about the others?" he asked. "Martinez, Rodriguez, all of them. They tried just as hard." "They did, and they'll get other opportunities. But you're the one who made it through today. You're the one who refused to quit when quitting would have been easier. That's the difference between good and great." Emma started walking back toward the base. Over her shoulder, she called, "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start the real training. Everything up until now was just the warm-up." Donovan stood there in the rain, holding his father's coin, thinking about everything that had happened. The bar, the shame, the training, the failures and small victories, the journey from arrogant soldier to humbled student. He thought about Marcus Reeves, a man he'd never met who died because he was too human. He thought about Emma carrying the weight of that loss, turning it into lessons for others. He thought about the 2 wolves inside every person and which one he'd choose to feed from this day forward. 6 months of brutal training lay ahead. He'd be broken down and built back up. He'd fail more times than he'd succeed. He'd learn things about himself, about combat, about leadership that would fundamentally change who he was. But he was ready for it, ready to become something more than he'd been, ready to honor the legacy of men like his father and Marcus Reeves, ready to prove that Emma's faith in him wasn't misplaced. The next morning, Donovan woke before his alarm. His body ached in places he didn't know could ache. His hand was healing but still tender. His ankle was wrapped tight. He got dressed, grabbed his gear, and headed to the training ground. Emma was already there, along with the 6 DevGru operators who would be his instructors for the next 6 months. "You showed up," Emma said. It wasn't a question, but there was approval in her tone. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would. There's a difference." The training began with hand-to-hand combat, not the structured, rules-based fighting Donovan had learned in Ranger School. This was brutal, practical, designed to kill or disable as quickly as possible. One of the DevGru operators, a man named Hayes with scars on his knuckles and a quiet intensity in his eyes, demonstrated techniques that made Donovan's stomach turn. Pressure points that could paralyze, strikes that could collapse a windpipe, holds that could break bones. This isn't sport fighting, Hayes said. This is survival. When you're behind enemy lines and someone gets the drop on you, you have 2 seconds to decide whether you're going home or going in a body bag. These techniques give you those 2 seconds. They practiced for hours. Donovan was thrown, choked, struck, twisted into positions that made his joints scream. But he kept getting up, kept trying, kept learning. During a water break, Emma pulled him aside. "Your hand is holding you back," she said, looking at the splint. "We need to take it off." The doctor said another 2 weeks. The doctor isn't training to be a Tier 1 operator. Take it off or go home. Donovan looked at his hand at the splint that had protected his healing fingers. Then he looked at Emma's face at the challenge in her eyes. He ripped the splint off. His fingers were stiff, the joints swollen, but they moved. It hurt like hell, but they moved. "Good," Emma said. "And now let's see if you can actually use them." The training continued. Weapon systems, explosives, communications, medical procedures that went far beyond basic first aid. They learned to set broken bones, to suture wounds, to perform emergency procedures that could save lives in the field. Donovan absorbed it all like a sponge. Every technique, every piece of knowledge, every hard-won lesson. He filled notebooks with diagrams and notes. He practiced until his muscles moved without conscious thought. He pushed past pain, past exhaustion, past the voice in his head that said he couldn't do this. 2 months in, Emma called him to her office. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I should have told you at the beginning." Donovan sat down, concerned by the seriousness in her tone. "The night in the bar, when you hit me, I could have ended you right there, could have broken both your arms and left you on the floor. It would have been justified, would have been self-defense." "I know," Donovan said quietly, "but I didn't. Want to know why?" He nodded. "Because I saw something in you, something worth saving. You were drunk, stupid, full of ego. But underneath all that, I saw a soldier who wanted to be better, who wanted to matter. You just didn't know how." Emma leaned forward. "I've trained a lot of people. Most of them had perfect records, perfect scores, perfect attitudes. And most of them washed out because when things got hard, when the training stripped away all there were pretenses, there was nothing underneath. No core, no real strength." She tapped the desk between them. "You've got that core. I saw it when you climbed that building during Friday's exercise. I saw it when you refused to quit during the ruck march. I see it every day when you show up broken and exhausted and still ready to learn. That's what makes a Tier 1 operator. Not physical ability, not test scores, but that refusal to quit, that hunger to be better, that willingness to face your own failures and grow from them." Donovan felt something shift in his chest. "Thank you for seeing that, for giving me this chance. Don't thank me. Prove me right. Show me that my faith wasn't all up misplaced." 4 months in, the Rangers from the original 12 started showing up to watch Donovan train. Martinez, Thompson, Keller, all of them. They'd heard he was still going, they was actually making it through selection, and they wanted to see for themselves. During a break, Martinez pulled Donovan aside. "Man, you look like hell," Martinez said, but there was pride in his voice. "Feel worse," Donovan admitted. "But I'm still here. We heard you're the only one left from the original group." "That true?" "Yeah, 2 other guys from different units started when I did. One quit, one got injured. It's just me now." Keller joined them. "You're going to make it, aren't you? You're actually going to graduate this thing." Donovan looked at his friends, at the men who'd been with him that night in the bar. "I don't know, but I'm going to try until they drag me out or I make it through. That's all I can do." Thompson appeared grinning. "That's all any of us can do, brother. Keep fighting, keep learning, keep getting better." They stood there together, these 4 Rangers who'd started this journey in shame and failure, and Donovan realized something profound. They'd all grown from that night. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not to the same degree, but they'd all taken the lesson Emma had taught them and applied it to their own lives. The final test came on the last day of the 6th month. It was called the culmination exercise, and it combined everything they'd learned into one brutal 36-hour evaluation. Donovan would be dropped into a simulated hostile environment with nothing but a knife and a radio. He'd have to evade capture, make contact with friendly forces, gather intelligence, and extract without being detected. The opposing force was 10 DevGru operators who knew the terrain and knew every trick Donovan might try. Emma gave him his final briefing. "This is it. Everything you've learned, everything you've become, comes down to the next 36 hours. If you succeed, you graduate. If you fail, you go back to being a Ranger. No shame in that, but you'll always know you were this close. Donovan nodded, checked his knife, tested his radio. One more thing, Emma said. She handed him a small patch. It was black with a gold trident. The SEAL trident. You won't earn this today. That takes years more training. But if you succeed, you'll be on the path. You'll be one step closer to becoming the operator I think you can be. Donovan looked at the patch, at the symbol of everything he'd been working toward. Don't let me down, Emma said softly. Don't let yourself down. And don't let Marcus down. He'd have liked you, you know. Would have recognized the fire in you. Then she walked away, leaving Donovan alone with his thoughts and his mission. The 36 hours that followed were the hardest of Donovan's life. He was captured twice and escaped both times. He went 2 days without food, sleeping in 30-minute increments, moving constantly to stay ahead of his pursuers. He made contact with the friendly forces, gathered the required intelligence, and extracted exactly on schedule, despite a pursuit that came within feet of catching him. When he stumbled across the finish line, covered in mud and exhausted to the point of collapse, Emma was waiting. Congratulations, she said, you made it. Donovan wanted to celebrate, wanted to shout, but he was too tired. He just nodded and sat down hard on the ground. Emma sat beside him. You know what the hardest part of being strong is? Donovan remembered her words from that first night. Knowing when to hold your power. That's right, you learned that lesson. You learned it the hard way through pain and failure and humiliation. But you learned it. That makes you stronger than most people will ever be. She stood up and offered him her hand one final time. Donovan took it, let her pull him to his feet. Welcome to the next phase of your journey, Donovan Thatcher. You're not a SEAL yet. You're not even close. But you're on the path, and that's something worth being proud of. Donovan looked at Emma, at the small woman who'd taken a drunk, arrogant soldier and transformed him into something better. She'd broken him down and built him back up. She'd shown him his weaknesses and taught him how to overcome them. She'd given him a gift more valuable than any rank or medal, the knowledge of who he could become if he kept fighting to be better. Thank you, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Emma smiled. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You did the work. You made the choice to grow instead of quit. All I did was show you the path. You're the one who walked it. 6 months after the worst night of his life, Donovan Thatcher stood on a training ground in the rain, holding a challenge coin that represented not just his father's legacy, but his own journey from shame to strength. He'd learned that real power wasn't about dominating others or proving you were the strongest person in the room. Real power was about discipline, about choosing when to act and when to show restraint, about growing from your failures instead of being destroyed by them. He'd learned that the hardest battles aren't fought against external enemies, but against the parts of yourself that want to take the easy path, that want to quit when things get hard, that want to blame others instead of taking responsibility. And most importantly, he'd learned that strength without wisdom is just violence. But strength combined with humility, discipline, and honor becomes something extraordinary. Emma Kincaid had taught him all of this not through lectures or books, but through brutal, unforgiving experience that stripped away everything he thought he knew and rebuilt him into someone capable of walking the path toward becoming a Tier 1 operator. The journey wasn't over, would never truly be over, because growth was a lifelong pursuit. But Donovan finally understood what it meant to feed the right wolf, to be strong in the ways that actually mattered, and to honor the legacy of warriors like his father and Marcus Reeves, who'd given everything so that others could learn to be better. VidIX on at 4.5.